Agent Buttercup, are you there? Are you there, Agent Buttercup?
I'm here. Are you there?
I'm here. I'm here. I'm in my private headquarters. I think we have some recruits who want to come in, but I'm not so sure I can trust them. What do you think?
I don't know. I, I haven't had a chance to vet them. I don't know if I can trust them. I'm nervous. I don't know if we can do it with them.
I swept my headquarters for bugs. Did you sweep your headquarters?
I did. I made sure there's nothing, no listening devices, no surveillance cameras besides my computer. I,
Good. Good. Excellent. Okay, well, then I think we can reveal ourselves. What do you think?
I guess so. I think we have to.
All right. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
perfect.
gosh. Okay. Whew. All right. Oh, goodness gracious. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the International Spy Museum.
Hi, guys.
Hi, everyone. We are so excited to see you today and to get started. It is Friday, which means it is Spy's Eye View and our Spy Skills workshop today. We have a really special treat for you today. We are bringing in an expert. You guys are going to get to meet Jonna Mendez today. But just so you know what you're in for, you are going to meet, quite honestly, one of our favorite board members who has been with the Spy Museum since the very beginning, and she actually is one of the key consultants for our youth programming. When we go to create any programming, we talk to Jonna Mendez about it, and here's why. She had a 27-year career at the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency. And at the CIA, she eventually became the chief of disguise in the Office of Technical Service. And what that means is, for those of you who have ever watched a James Bond movie, she was like a member of the Q branch of Q, the gadget makers, the people who helped with the disguises and helped the agents out on mission and helped to support their missions. She received a CIA Intelligence Commendation Medal, and she has appeared on many clips and television shows, and she is a great friend, a loyal friend to the International Spy Museum, and has agreed to come to us today. Before we reveal her, I think she's at headquarters, right, Agent Buttercup?
Fingers crossed.
She's at headquarters. But before we do, let me show you a clip of what a lot of people think of, and maybe even you think of when you think about disguise. Let's roll that. Oh gosh. Okay, so that is from the movies, right? We think about disguise as someone just peeling off their face and becoming someone completely different. I have no idea if that's true or not, but we're going to talk to Jonna about it. Are we ready to bring Jonna into the house?
We are ready to bring her into the house.
Come in, Tech Ops. Come in. Tech Ops, are you there? There she is. And there she is, looking more beautiful than she's ever looked. This is Jonna Mendez. Except I think it is. Is it Jonna? There she is. Hi, Jonna.
Hey, good to see you guys.
Thank you so much for being with us today. We've got a whole bunch of young recruits out there and their families, and we don't even know who's out there because we can't see them, but they can see and hear us. And they're going to be writing questions in.
And we got a lot of questions coming in.
We got a lot of questions. Now I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to start off with one question for you, Jonna, that I think is going to get the ball rolling in our conversation today. And that is, how does someone even become the chief of disguise at the CIA? When you were, say, 10 years old, was this what you dreamt of in terms of, when I'm a grown-up, I want to be the chief of disguise at the CIA? What was your journey and your path to this amazing career?
When I was 10 years old, all I really wanted to do was read. It was a problem. I got actually dismissed from my brownie troop because I wouldn't put my books down. Years and years later, I went to Europe to be in a friend's wedding and didn't go home. I actually got a job at a bank in Germany, the Chase Manhattan Bank. I met some Americans that were wandering through every 2 weeks with their paychecks. I got to know them. 2 years later, I married one of them in Switzerland, and he was a CIA officer. So as we traveled around the world, I needed a job always. I always needed a job. And I was hired on overseas as a secretary. When I came back to the States, I was an avid photographer, and I ended up working in this technical office as a secretary, but I was going to leave. I was bored. The work wasn't very interesting. And I told my boss this. He said, why don't you take some of our photo courses? And I did. Amazing courses, up in airplanes with big long lenses. And I became initially a photo operations officer. And then I went to what we call the subcontinent. I spent a summer out there. I came back to Washington. I told my office I wanted an assignment out there. There was no photo job for me. They said there's a disguise job coming up. And I said, okay, I will completely take a right turn and train as a disguise officer. And so I did.
Wow.
Once you're a disguise officer, the trick is to be really good at it. And eventually I came back and became the deputy chief. And then I became the chief. But this was never really a plan, certainly not from when I was young. It was something that just sort of developed as I went along.
But you must have had, there must be some skills you can point to that you've always had, you've always possessed, that now when you look back on it, these were skills and attributes that you had that really enabled you to excel in this career as chief of disguise.
You know, my husband and I just finished his last, our most recent book. And somewhere at the beginning, I'm describing what we look for when we're hiring CIA officers. And it wasn't until I was in the middle of writing that there was a little bit of recognition going on that, oh yeah, that's a little bit of me. We were looking for people who were curious, people who were interested in what's going on in the world. We were looking for people who could solve problems, for people who could take a group of disparate things and make a tool that would be the tool they needed to do the job. Those kinds of things. I actually possess those qualities. A little bit of an artistic sensibility helped me both with photography and with disguise. They all kind of came together.
So for the kids out there listening and watching today, you know, if they are kids who like to, you know, sort of take apart their toaster just for fun.
Absolutely.
If they're a kid who's just sort of asking the what if questions and likes to have plan A, B, C, and D ready to go, thinking creatively and thinking strategically, would you say those are the kids who can use those, you know, those are the skills that would come in handy in a career at the CIA?
You know, those skills will actually come in handy in a variety of places, but those are things that the CIA is certainly interested in.
That's great. Well, Agent Buttercup, let's turn to some of the questions that we got from a bunch of our young recruits out there, because I know they're waiting and we're getting tons of questions, and we got a bunch in advance too.
Yes, we did. And
what is everyone? We're going to take this on a need-to-know basis, right?
So I think one of the most popular ones is, what was your favorite disguise? And maybe talk about the different tiers of, like, from a quick change all the way to a heavy disguise, and how long these would take. Those sorts of things are a lot of what people are asking right now.
My favorite disguise was just kind of a quirky one. I was trying out some new material on the streets of Washington, D.C. So I was dropped off by a van who was going to pick me up about 20 minutes later. So I had about 20 minutes to see how this worked. I had on red stiletto heels. I had on a mask that turned me into an African American. I had gloves to match it. I looked really good. And then it started raining. It started really, really raining. It was pouring down rain. It rained so hard all of a sudden that you couldn't be out on the street. You had to go inside. Well, I had never worn this kind of a disguise inside, so I went in a restaurant, and I was very uncomfortable. And my glasses were fogging up because the heat from my body was coming out through the eye holes of the mask. And I thought, well, I can't really take these glasses off. I have to go back out. And I went and stood on a street corner waiting for my van to come. There was a parking lot attendant across the street in a little shack, a little building, which is in Georgetown. And he said, come on over here. He's leaning out in the rain. Come on over here. You can. And I said, no, I can't. And finally my van came and got me. And I was just, I ruined my shoes. I had to throw away those stilettos. They were my faves.
No one's wearing those now anyway.
See, yeah, I was ahead of the times.
You know, I'm listening to you talk and I realize we haven't really gone over the basics of what is the purpose of disguise for spies. You know, everyone thinks they know this, but, you know, they might not realize that, you know, that peeling off of the face, and you're talking about masks, is that really what's common? And what is the role of disguise? I'm going to jump in and let's get these basics covered. Why do spies even need disguises?
That's a huge question. That's a book, but let me take a couple of pieces of it. We use disguise to conceal our identity for a variety of reasons. The easiest reason, you might be sitting in a cafe in Paris meeting with an agent, and your neighbor from Arlington might walk by and say, "Hi, Jonna," but I'm not Jonna. I'm Jane from Washington. That's the simplest reason. The most difficult reason is in a place like Moscow, if we're meeting with an agent, and if the local KGB or FSB today, if they would find who we're meeting with, they would arrest that person, and typically they would execute that person. That's a worst case scenario. So in that sense, it becomes a form of body armor. Disguise can protect you from danger, from being shot, from being arrested, from being worse. That's the two extremes. In the middle is an idea in the disguise labs that what we want to do is change you to such an extent that if someone met you and then had to write a memo to their boss that said, oh, I met this American and this is what he or she looked like. They had brown hair. Wrong. They wore glasses. Wrong. They had blue eyes. We could make that wrong too. They had beautiful teeth. We could make that wrong with something like this.
Ooh.
Or they had terrible teeth, and we could make that wrong with something like this. He was married. She was married. Wedding ring. We'd take it off. He wore too much cologne. We would have added that. A gold chain, the shirt unbuttoned. Maybe this is a diplomat. Completely changing the character that they met. Not only just how they looked, but how did they smoke? You know, everything about them, and everything in that memo that would be written about that person would be wrong. That was a goal.
That is so cool. So it really is about everything, not just the hat and the wig and the face. It's everything, the whole range, how you carry your body.
Yeah.
Well, Agent Buttercup, do we have some great questions coming in?
Ms. Fausner's 4th grade class out in Pennsylvania wants to know, what was your favorite thing about your job?
Hey, Ms. Fausner's class.
I think I spelled that or said that right. I apologize if I didn't.
The thing that I liked the most, and the thing that kept me there all those years, was the idea that I was protecting people. People that wanted to work for the United States government and help us in just a lot of different ways around the world. Those people were taking a chance in their own country. They were helping us, but they were not helping their country. They could get into huge trouble if they were caught. If our disguises could help keep that separation between the real person they were meeting and them, then it was a win-win. That was the meat of the matter as far as I was concerned, that protection.
You really, I mean, people don't think about it because disguise is so much fun to think about, but it's really about saving lives and protecting lives. I mean, that your job was pretty was very important, and people depended on you to come through for them.
You know, a lot of the time, what we were trying to do with our officers as well is just make them not look American. Mm-hmm. Remove that Americanness from them in an overseas environment. And that was a challenge in itself, because Americans kind of stand out when we're in another country. And it boils down to identifying what is it that identifies us as Americans, and then how do we change that? Sometimes it's your clothing, that's easy. Sometimes it's your behavior, your manners, that's harder.
Can you describe one thing that Americans do that most other, people from other countries don't do, that is a sure giveaway that you're an American?
In Europe, a couple of things that consistently they say about Americans: we're too noisy, we're too loud, we're sort of rowdy. They're not. We are also very sloppy, and they're not. So we will show up in our blindingly white sneakers and shorts and sweatshirts or sweatpants and a baseball cap, maybe backwards. They don't really walk out of their front door that way. They put themselves together a little more carefully. So while we feel comfortable and we think, how do they know? Oh, they know. They can see us from a distance.
And I remember you telling me once, and I think about it all the time, that Americans tend to lean, like in an elevator, they're leaning up against the wall.
Oh, yeah.
Leaning on things. And also, I remember you also saying they will eat while they walk, just be eating while they're walking, a granola bar or burger or something. And most other, people from other countries don't carry themselves that way.
The leaning thing, once that is planted in your mind and you think about it, if you're on an elevator, just look, there are people leaning against the walls. Americans, wherever we are, if there's something to prop ourselves up, we do it. We stand on one foot and that hip out a little bit, all our weight's on one foot. Europeans just stand up straight on 2 feet. That's, their mothers must have really given them a lesson. But that's how they stand, and that's not what we do, and they see us. They see it.
Jonna, I'm getting a lot of questions about people asking about the language side of it. Disguise is a full, you might have a full disguise on, but if you don't speak the language or the dialect in that country and you're supposed to blend in, how does the language play a role?
That's actually very true. And, Americans are notorious for not speaking foreign languages. We're a little lazy because most foreigners have a little bit of English. That's the great excuse. There was a sister branch to Disguise where I worked in the Office of Technical Service, and it was our documents people, and we had a group of linguists. It was a large group of linguists. One of them spoke 6 languages. They would accompany us. They would help us, but they couldn't speak for us. So we had to be very careful. If someone said, I'm going to pretend to be French and couldn't speak French, then we'd find someone else.
So language, you weren't going to make someone blend in completely as a citizen of that country unless they had all the language skills that they needed to be seen like they, otherwise they were going to be a tourist or a visitor to that.
A tourist from another country, not America.
Another country, right. So it's still part of what we call, you call it your cover identity.
That's right.
Yeah, so that it's the false name that you're traveling under, and where you're from, maybe a false occupation, and you need to not just know it but live that. So I think that's a really clearly our viewers and listeners are thinking about what it really takes to do this line of work, to operate in disguise.
Today when the CIA is looking at applicants, they are looking for people with language capabilities. If you really can speak Chinese or Russian, Korean, one of these more exotic foreign languages, that is your ticket into the CIA. It's such a valued skill, and it is so small. We only hire Americans. We don't hire foreign born. You have to be American to be hired by the CIA. Because you're American, you typically will not have those skills. So it's a trick. But people that have traveled a lot, people that have been exposed to foreign languages, or people that have chosen to study foreign languages really have a foot up when it comes to employment.
Yeah. What else do we have, Buttercup? I want to make sure that we get to all these questions that I know are coming in.
I know it's a lot to keep track of. Jacqueline has a really good question. She wants to know, have you ever experienced an issue when a disguise prop comes off during an operation? Or maybe something hasn't gone right?
When your nose falls off. Problem.
No, not during an operation. I mean, that was like everyone's nightmare. There was always this old joke about your mustache falling into your soup. And so what we did with our mustaches, like this one, is we had a unique glue that would not allow your mustache to come off. It would withstand humidity. It would withstand high temperatures. It would, you could laugh and jiggle it around. It wouldn't come off. That was never a problem. The problem was actually just the opposite. The problem was, what if you get in a situation where you have to remove your disguise? What if you're on a street and you're going to turn a corner or go into a door and you need it, all of it to come off? A wig, a mustache, glasses, blah, blah. That was an issue. And so when we came up with those masks, part of the beauty of the mask technology was it all went on at once. You could do it in a dark car in a parking garage. Pull it on, and it would only fit you. It didn't fit anyone else. And there was like a registration. You could feel it. You knew when it was right. So the design parameters were that you should be able to get it on in 10 seconds in a dark parked car. And it should come off even faster than that, crumple into nothing, where you could stick it under your arm, or you could stick it into a pocket, or you could get rid of the evidence if you had to. That was important. I was just speaking to a man that I worked with. He was wearing one of those masks in Moscow. He had a moment when it had to come off, and he took it off. I heard two different stories. I heard that he put it under a heavy rock. The other story was, I heard that the KGB found it and that they put it in their museum. I have to say, I was kind of hoping it was in the museum, because maybe eventually I could figure out how I could go and visit it. It was a wonderful piece of work. But I just talked to him recently, and he told me, no, what actually happened is it did go into the rock, and then they built a high-rise building on top of the rock. So he said it's under tons and tons and tons of concrete somewhere.
Wow.
In the ground.
Oh, go ahead.
In the ground. It'll never be seen.
Never be seen again. Well, we are going to share some things with our viewers and our listeners. What do you think, Buttercup and Jonna? Do you think that now's a good time to sort of show the video where you have to transform yourself as you're walking down the street? A lot of people think that when a disguise is being made, that you're actually sitting for hours taking molds, and it's a whole thing that happens behind the scenes. But what you described beyond the mask is having to change your appearance as you are moving through the environment. And
right.
We do have a video of that. Do you want to give a little introduction to that, and then we can show that just to give people an image of what that's like?
This video, I think, is going to show my son, Jonna Mendez. He went to New York with me, and we filmed this piece that you're going to see. Jesse had about 15 minutes to practice this in a hotel corridor, and then he took it out on the street in New York City at lunch and did what we call a quick change disguise. He walks out of a doorway looking. He's got on a blazer. He's got on business clothes. He's got a little bag. He's going out for lunch. And within about, 20 seconds, he turns into some dude with his earphones in, and he's just bopping down the street. Just, it's a total change. And it was, he did a really good job of it.
Let's show it.
Quick change is the ability to clandestinely change your appearance. Typically, when you're out on the street, you're using the crowd as a mask. When we're doing this, we measure it in the number of steps, and then we rehearse whoever's going to do it. You're going to go in the gap. You have 37 seconds to come out with those changes. The goal of the quick change is to disappear. If you had surveillance and they discovered that you were gone, you didn't want them to think that you had escaped. You wanted them to think that they had lost you. It was their fault. Blending in is situational. It depends on where you are. You need to understand what the commonality is there, what this tribe is that you want to join. And once you join that tribe, you can typically move around freely because there's no suspicion.
So that's the quick change happening right as he's walking down the street, and everything has to be able to come off quickly, and you always have to have your bag. You're not leaving pieces of your disguise behind you.
You really have to think it through. It's a step by step. It's very methodical. A bag within a bag. Your backpack goes into a shopping bag. You know, your earphones come out of your pocket. Your glasses come out of where? Where did you put them? You have to build this thing to make it really smoothly happen. And you notice that nobody blinked when he took off his tie. That's no big deal. But when he pulled off his shirt because it was split in the back, he just pulled it down and he's got on a black tank. That shirt went straight into that bag. No one on the street blinked. No one ever will blink because no one pays attention. Anybody coming at you when you're doing that, they see one small moment of it. Anyone behind you basically sees nothing unusual.
Yeah, I remember you built a disguise for me once. I transformed myself into a pretty creepy looking man. And I remember that you took a turtleneck and you put Velcro down the back. And so when I went to remove it, I just literally pulled it off and stuck it in the bag. It was one of the most, that was the easy part of that disguise.
I remember
Getting rid of all this hair and putting it up in the wig was the hard part. We'll show you a picture of that later. Buttercup, I want to make sure that we make time to get to the burning questions. Because it's all about our viewers, our listeners today. So what do we got from them?
So Andrew wants to know, what's it like? How hard is it to cover tattoos and maybe large birthmarks or things like that? And then another question we get from Caitlin is, what does it feel like to have these masks on or these gloves and other things that you want to feel like normal skin, but isn't?
These kids are thinking this through. Okay.
I know.
Yeah. Tattoos, scars, birthmarks, those kinds of things can be obscured with, I don't know if the brand has changed. It used to be called Dermablend. It was, you buy it over the counter at some, department store. It was waterproof. You could swim in it. It would completely cover tattoos. I never tried to do a full arm because people weren't doing full arm tattoos. That's something that's come about since I stopped doing it. But it was fabulous. It was really effective, and it came in all different skin tones. So if it's not out there under the name Dermablend, it's still out there under some other name. But yeah, it's cosmetically you can do that. What's it like to be inside of a mask? Well, that was an issue because we inherited the technology from Hollywood, and for Hollywood, what you see on the screen is not actually what's going on. These peel-offs and everything. It takes hours for them to put those things on. It takes, if it's a real thing, it takes another hour to take it off. And a lot of it, of course, is CGI. Their materials didn't work for us because they weren't interested in your comfort. They were interested in how it looked to the camera. we had live human beings that were out there already sweating bullets, and now we're going to put a mask on them. So we spent years refining the materials that we made those masks out of. We were looking for something that would breathe. We were looking for something that would move, because we wanted not just breathability, but we wanted animation. Those two things were a priority. A mask, no mask is going to be comfortable if you're in Bangkok in the hot season, where it's like 85% humidity and it's maybe 110 degrees. You don't wear a mask then. If you do, you wear it in the car in an air-conditioned environment. So we would not only build the disguise materials, but we would build them to the scenario that you're going to use it in. And sometimes people would say, I need a mask, and we'd end up saying, well, a mask won't work in that situation. But we're perfectly willing to dye your hair, ask you to grow a mustache. I mean, if it has to look real and feel real and you got to wear it for a week, we can still do it.
Now,
lots of ways to do it.
You've had some experience wearing one of these masks, or a mask that at the time, and maybe even still, was so technologically advanced. And I think we have some photos we can bring up, and maybe you can tell us the story of this.
I didn't know back when this happened that it was going to become a piece of my history that was going to live on forever. I was chief of disguise at this time. I had been shepherding this program through production to come out with these new models of masks. This was something that had been started 10 years before I got there. It wasn't like it was my idea, but I was there when we got to the end of it. And so I had the first mask that really came out of production. I wore it and showed it to the head of CIA. That's Judge Webster. He's sitting in the middle of that picture between me and, he's sitting in the middle of that picture. He liked it so much, he said, let's take it to the White House. But the mask that I showed him was an African-American man. And I said, this looks great, but I can't carry this off, certainly not in the White House. He said, well, then make another one. Make one that you can carry off. So I borrowed someone's face in my office. I'm actually wearing someone else's face. And it only fit me, fit really, really well. The judge said, let's go to the White House. I went to the judge's house without my mask on. His little dog hated me, bark, 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 at the door. I went in the powder room. I put on the mask. I came out of the powder room, and the dog loved me, which I took as a really good sign that this was going to go well. I told the judge, the head of CIA, I said, I don't have any identification. He said, you don't need it. Just hang on to my coattails, is what he said. So we went to the White House. There was a meeting going on in the Oval Office. It was going long, so we were stuck outside, a group of us. It's all men. They're all telling jokes. They're all laughing. I'm over somewhere chewing on my pencil because I'm nervous. When we went in, I was the first one in, so I took the first chair closest to him. I was also going to be the first one out. And my husband, Antonio Mendez, said, be careful that the door you come in. As you can see in this picture, there are 2 doors, but there are actually 6 doors. He said, and if you aren't careful, you'll walk into the broom closet. I was the first one out, but in between, I showed the president some photographs of himself in disguise. That's what he's looking at. And then I said, so I'm here to show you the newest and latest thing. And he's looking around like, well, where's your bag of stuff? I said, I'm wearing it. Here, let me take it off and I'll show it to you. So I start to do the peel. And he says, no. And he got up and he came and he walked and he looked and he walked and then he came back. He sat down. He said, okay, take it off. And so I did the Tom Cruise peel. There's a White House photographer in the room who's taking pictures, and that's where this picture came from. I think that's pretty routine that she's in there whenever there's a meeting. But the guy with his back to me, right between me and the camera, that's John Sununu. He almost fell out of his chair when I took that mask off. The president, as you can tell, is smiling. He really liked it. He really got very animated during this whole thing. It took me 10 years to get that picture. And when I got it, they airbrushed the mask that I'm holding out of the picture. So it was just a picture of me with my hand in the air. I looked like, sort of like I was lecturing the president. They've only declassified this a couple of years ago. And this is something we could never, ever talk about. And I never did. But now we can show the pictures, and it's fun to show them.
We can show a close-up. There's the mask itself, and you can see the hair is attached to it. You could see the cutout for the eyes. It also went over your lips. So as you were speaking, which you were at close distance to the President of the United States, George Bush, those lips had to move like naturally lips would move on a face, right?
I thought she was very pretty, and I felt very pretty wearing this mask. Then I saw some recent pictures of the mask. Oh my God, she's aging terribly. Well, they're not taking care of her hair, and whoever put those glasses on her should be, shot.
She's living at the CIA still. We don't even have her at the Spy Museum. We just have photographs like what we're showing you guys now.
I think she lives in a box in the archives, and I think every once in a while they pull it out, which I think is what's going on here. But I wish I still had her. I liked her a lot.
So cool. Well, let's get to some more questions from our viewers. Any good questions out there?
Yeah, to go back to the mask, a lot of people are asking, can they bypass facial recognition?
Could it bypass facial recognition? Well, that's an interesting question. Facial recognition measures so many things. I think the material might have an issue with facial recognition, but I don't know that. The fact is that the CIA has allowed me to talk about this subject. Typically, if it's classified, like this used to be, I couldn't talk about it. The fact that they let me talk about it means it's no longer classified. Might mean they are not using exactly this disguise technique. Maybe they've got a better one.
So Revis wants to know how to make the masks. And I think that goes along with some other people are sort of asking, I think, can we talk about sort of a quick change disguise all the way to a heavy disguise? What's that process? And I know we have some sketches that maybe we bring up, but talking about that process and fitting the disguise to the person and how long that takes.
You basically fit the disguise to the scenario. And the person is the interface. It has to fit the person, but it also has to fit the event. We did an operation in Moscow that was very famous. It was one of the best we ever did. And it's over. And that's why we're able to talk about it. It was called CK Ta. That was where we started using quick change disguise. And to sell it to our office director, Antonio Mendez, walked down a long, empty hallway, starting out as a man in a business suit and a raincoat with a briefcase, and ending up standing in front of our office director 43 steps later. He's an old woman wearing a pink coat with a shawl, gray hair, pushing a grocery cart, wearing black Mary Jane shoes, black stockings, with breasts that started out as the covers for his Mary Jane shoes. It was amazing. Our office director, who didn't have an enormous imagination, looked at this, thought about it. He said, okay, let's do it. And that was a model for how we got a man, a diplomat in Moscow, through a heavily traveled park, down a street that he didn't belong on, to a manhole, lifted the manhole cover and got him in a manhole so he could do some work down there. It was an amazing operation.
And I think we have some sketches that we can bring up, Buttercup. I think, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this shows the various detail that was put into that disguise. If you look closely, you can see all the various aspects of the disguise, from a reversible trench coat. And that's something that you guys taught me, this idea of reversible clothing being so important because you could just so quickly take it off, reverse it, put it back on, and
you actually peel it off. If it's a coat, instead of taking it off normally, you hold on to the cuffs, you peel it off. So when you take it off, you turn it inside out at the same time. That briefcase turned into a shopping cart full of groceries. It just was pop-up. That came out of the magic community in Hollywood. The Mary Jane shoes and the dark tights, that was Antonio Mendez just being crazy. The hair was sewn into a shawl, and the shawl was attached to the coat. So all of that, when it reversed, all of that came out. The coat was now pink. It was a woman's coat. The shawl was there. The hair was attached to the shawl. It just it was a great concept.
And all that preparation and thinking about it, has to be, perfect, ironclad, because as someone said earlier, you don't want to be doing that and then just have your hair fall off and your nose fall off. I mean,
oh no, when you do something like this, you practice and practice and practice. People at CIA headquarters would encounter us in the hallways after hours when we were taking some of these concepts and refining them in the hallways when no one was around. We had people who would be jogging. CIA headquarters is huge. You could actually jog around the perimeter of the building. I don't know, it was maybe half a mile. So we'd have a jogger come by and some of this stuff going on.
Wow.
Crazy moments.
I'm getting a lot of questions wanting to know, one, are you able to recognize someone in disguise on the streets of DC or anywhere you go? And two, pre-COVID, did you ever go out into disguise after you were in the CIA?
But we can bring up slides of
I know,
that.
I was going to pull up the other slides.
Quarantine. We have some quarantine disguises that Jonna was just doing for fun one day in her apartment. We can bring up that slide.
Oh, I know these. These were all taken on my balcony. I was actually trying to organize some of the materials, that we still have around, and so I was messing with them. Yeah, you can. But I didn't go anywhere in these. I don't want you to think I'm sneaking around town in disguise. Can I see disguises on other people? My basic answer is always, don't try and walk by me wearing a toupee. My head will swivel and I will laugh. Toupees are easy to spot. They're not necessarily disguises, but men that wear toupees get careless and they jump up on my screen. I can see someone wearing a wig. I never wonder why, because a lot of women, some men wear wigs. Fake hair goods, I don't see them very often. They're hard to do correctly. It's hard to even find them. You have to have them professionally made if you really want them to look realistic. A fake beard, for instance, I still have this one. Looks like this. It's not been trimmed. It's on lace. Every piece of hair that's put in there is hand knotted. If I trimmed this down, trimmed the beard, barbered it, put it on, made it short, you wouldn't be able to see this. Most people could not see it, but most people would never start with something, with a product that is so excellent. There's no need. Who's going to do that unless it's an intelligence service who's doing disguise? Hollywood is able to do some amazing things. Actually, if you watch Saturday Night Live, they have a phenomenal disguise department. I call it disguise. What would they call it?
Costume.
It's their costume people, but they're really, really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know we have a whole bunch more questions coming in.
There was a second piece of that I didn't touch. Was there? Wearing disguise? No.
If there are a lot of people walking around in disguise in DC.
Yeah.
I think you figured out you can spot them.
The disguises that I suspect in DC, but I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. If I see somebody in Georgetown on a ladder doing a window cleaning outside of a shop, I think to myself, tuck that away. That's a great disguise. When I see a FedEx guy walking down the street with his box and getting ready to go into an office building through security, I think to myself, that's a great disguise. Sometimes I look at waiters who are dressed uniquely in a restaurant, and I think, it'd be really easy to pass yourself off as a waiter. So I don't see people in disguise. What I see are disguises that I would like to use. Flip side.
So it's so funny. And we've heard this from you and from other former spies, that the way you look at the world is a completely different way of looking at the world. We move through our environment not thinking about a lot of the things that we see or that we don't see. We see them, but we don't really think about them.
Yeah.
As a former spy, you think about pretty much everything in your environment as a threat or an opportunity.
You also learn to pay attention on the street. You just do. And it's not something that leaves you. I'm starting to understand that it will never leave you. You kind of know who's there, and you have a sense of who's around you. And
you call that operational awareness?
That's what we called it.
Yeah.
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 So I have a lot of people I'm going to combine. I feel like I'm combining everyone's questions, so I apologize for not saying your name, but talking about opposite genders and, how hard is that? And from a voice standpoint to making them larger or thinner or younger or older, male, female.
Like extreme disguises.
Extreme, exactly. What is that like? What's doable? What's not doable?
Okay. Disguise by its very nature is an additive process. We are making you more something. We can make you taller. We can't make you shorter. We can have you sit down, but that's not quite the same. So we can, with shoes, we can make you taller. We can make you heavier. We can't make you thinner. With padding, I mean, we can add on to you ad infinitum. We can make you older. We can do wrinkles. We can do bags under your eyes. We can do all of those things, that kind of crepey skin that nobody wants. But we can't make you younger. We can make you, ugly is not the right word. We cannot make you prettier if you're a woman. We can make you really look bad.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we do ends up making you not look wonderful, but you look absolutely different. When you're working, you don't need wonderful, you need different. And that's what we were doing. So our women officers who use disguise, it was really interesting because women, they start playing with cosmetics when they're very young. Women are very comfortable changing the way they look. And our women were easy to work with when we were doing disguise. They didn't want to look awful. We didn't want to make them look awful, but we made them look different. Sometimes it's just removing a lot of makeup and jewelry and pulling your hair back tight. And I mean, it's simple with a woman. With a man, disguise was a harder thing. Men, first of all, didn't want to wear a wig, and they didn't want a fake mustache or a beard. They just didn't think it was manly. The military guys were the worst. The U.S. Marines were the very, very worst to try and put a disguise on a U.S. Marine. Because even with a disguise, they're still a Marine. They still stand like ramrod. I mean, these guys, they've been shaped. So we would put back braces on backwards on a Marine to pull his shoulders down, to try and tamp him down. They had these really short hairdos. Men could be hard, but it changed when we started working against narcotics and terrorism. Because before that, disguise had been a nice tool, something that would be useful, but not necessary. But with terrorism and narcotics, everything changed. They had guns, and they would kill us. And so our men started using our disguises way more often than they did before. It became body armor. It protected them. They immediately accepted that, and it has saved many lives.
You touched on this. We are getting some questions about the all the things that go into a cover identity beyond disguise, from fake passports to what we might want to explain what pocket litter is. Can you talk a little bit about all the elements of not just disguise but cover?
Well, cover is all encompassing, and we can't send you out the door with a cover identity and a disguise or not a disguise without being able to backstop it. Backstopping means if somebody calls your fake office phone number, somebody's going to answer the phone. It says, "Oh, he's not here. Can I take a message?" Your driver's license, your Visa card, your library card, all the stuff that you have in your pockets every day. You had to have all of that stuff there in your new name, with new phone numbers, and you had to learn new birth dates, where you were born. Anybody who saw the movie Argo would see Ben Affleck going through that with those hostages that he was getting ready to rescue. Going through it just like a drill at school when you have to memorize some of the information. They had to memorize new life stories in order to go through airport controls. That cover thing is important, but it's very doable. You just have to sit down and, work your way through it. Today, that's changed, I'm sure. Today, with all the digital, with the facial identification, with this digital world that we live in, there are some mechanical things that have to take place as well. I can't speak to those because I'm not there anymore, but my husband, Tony, always said whenever we would find a new technical obstacle to doing our work, he would say, they use it as a weapon. We can turn it around and use it back as a weapon, whatever it is. We can overwhelm the technology with the technology. I have to think that that is still true.
And for those of you who don't know, Donna's husband was Tony Mendez, and Ben Affleck played him in the movie Argo. So if it's age appropriate for you to watch the movie Argo, you will see the story of the exfiltration of the Americans from Iran in 1980 in that movie, portraying how it was more than just how they looked, but their entire cover, and how that was all backstopped. A good example of everything that goes into protecting the lives of American citizens and getting them out, and all of that has to do with cover. What else? We only have a few more minutes, so let's get to the last couple remaining questions.
2 more questions. First of all, Jonna, everyone is saying thank you for your service. I think thank you.
Love hearing that. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's a lot of people. Caitlin wants to know, if you were to make a homemade disguise to trick your parents or your sisters, what would you use?
Wow.
That's where
that is so situational, so situation dependent. I might suggest finding someone in your circle of contacts, people that maybe come to your door every once in a while, people that deliver things, people that pick things up, and trying to replicate them, or someone who would be attached to them, to make yourself part of a circle outside of the family that would be kind of familiar, but not too familiar, not like the next door neighbors, but maybe some people that pop in occasionally, and to become part of that group. I think that might work. If you can come up with a logo T-shirt or something representing the...
Ooh.
That's a great activity. And it leads us, if you want to just show, we do have a lot of support for that, for you guys, if you're stuck in quarantine, or even if you're not. We've got great activities on the museum's website and videos to help you, get into disguise. We've got a disguise for cover tip sheet with a fake passport that you can use. And then we have a video that talks about disguise. That's me in that video doing my version of a quick change. Same hat I wore today. And then up in the right-hand corner is the disguise that Jonna made for me.
You look great.
You look amazing as a man.
I have to say, I did not feel great wearing that. That wig was, it was so tight on my head. And then I realized I really prayed I didn't have to go to the bathroom while I wore that, because I'd have to use the men's room. So, but all of the resources we have at the Spy Museum to help you to learn more about disguise and to test your own skills are available on our website from this section called Spy on Us from Home. You just go to our website, click on that, and there's tons of resources, videos, worksheets, and all of that there for you to explore. So in these remaining minutes, we want to make sure that you go there and that you also know that we've got a bunch of upcoming programs for you every week, from virtual field trips if you want to book something private for your class, your group, to a family game night, which we're doing tonight. And we're going to be doing, it's sold out for tonight, but we're going to do it every Friday night, where we test your family to get into disguise and do all kinds of fun things in your own living room, in your own home, as well as every Friday we will have a webinar. This one is for disguise. I think at the end of the month we're going to do one on ninja, right, Lucy?
Fingers crossed.
We may get you up and moving and try some ninja. And then every Wednesday we're getting into the world of analysis, playing some mind games with you. So all of that's happening. But in these remaining minutes, I just want to let you know that Jonna Mendez is such a huge asset to the world, but to the Spy Museum in particular. And we're showing her book as well as her disguise of herself as a man. Did you smoke that cigar?
I can still, just looking at that picture, I can still taste that cigar.
Oh, that's what we call taking one for the team.
You know, the paperback version of this book comes out on the 19th, next week.
And we have it for sale in the museum's store, and we'd love for you to support the museum that way. These are trying times for us, and anything you can do to support the Spy Museum so that we can keep bringing you these free programs and try to entertain and engage you during this trying time. Please support us in that. If you're going to get the book, please get it from us. And Jonna, the book is amazing. And this is just, is this your fourth book?
That's the fourth one.
Fourth book. So there, you can really read all about Jonna and her husband, Tony, through these books and get a real sense of the actual work that they did overseas. And Jonna, thank you so much for being with us today. We applaud you for all the work that you do, but especially for being such a good friend to the Spy Museum. It means the world to us. Thank you for sharing yourself with us and with all the people out there today.
Well, you know that, like you two, I love doing this stuff. So it was my pleasure. It really was.
Well, everyone, that wraps up our webinar for today. Thank you so much for joining us. If we didn't get to your question, I do apologize. We will try to do our best. You can always email us at educator@spymuseum.org and try to get some questions. And there's Jonna already going back undercover, signing off. Thanks, you guys. Have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful.
Stay safe, everyone.
Bye, everyone.